Hello, and welcome to another Out and About with King Rollo and me, Fraser Harper. Rollo does the pictures,
and Fraser does most of the words.
And we both play a bit of music along the way. Today we're here in Fort Cumberland in Portsmouth.
And we're here to visit one of Portsmouth's best kept secrets and to meet Giles Collighan and his team, who run a business here at Fort Cumberland in some of the buildings left over from the heritage of our warlike history.
Hello, Giles.
Hi, nice to meet
Thanks
you.
for having us.
Thanks for having us. Shall we sit down?
Sure.
Yep.
Now, Portsmouth Distillery. I think you would probably describe yourself as an award-winning rum distillery that also makes award-winning gin. Am I correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the whole pretext when we first started the distillery up was that we wanted to focus on making rum, and kind of gin almost came in as after that, and almost to fill the gaps within the rum making process.
Now, as far as the distillery goes, you've got a bunch of casemates here. You've got the still room here. You've got the bar and the shop there. That's a powder room, I think.
Yeah, the old powder magazine for the gun emplacement.
Yeah, and that's the tasting room now, isn't it? Yeah, and then you've got offices over here. So can you tell us a little bit about the process of actually setting up the distillery, which was, you started in 2018?
Yeah, well, we started making in 2018, but I guess the process kind of goes back a year before that, from when we were writing the business case. And when we were thinking about setting up the distillery and what would the story be behind it, given the fact that we're situated here in the historic city of Portsmouth, we thought it would be, if we could find somewhere to base ourselves within one of the historic buildings that are around Portsmouth, would really help us build the story and also hook the brand onto. And maybe you'll see some of the bottles later on, but they've all got the shape of the fort on the front, so the brand sort of almost comes from where we're situated. So when we were looking around, we were very lucky. We were in the right place at the right time. In that, just as we were looking around, Historic England, who are our landlords here in Fort Cumberland, were just looking at how they could open up the fort to commercial businesses. But there's another couple of other there's a couple of boat builders who are already here in the fort. Mm-hmm. The Forgotten Veterans charity is based here. There's the company of makers. So slowly businesses are coming in, but it's kind of governed by the amount of finance that Historic England have got to refurbish the next casemates ready for the next small business to come in. But I think there's quite a queue of people waiting to come in, and as I say, our vision is that we'll almost have a bit of an artisan business park down here, which is open to the public and almost becomes self-generating.
That would be great.
Fingers crossed. It would be amazing.
Yeah. Okay, so here you are. You've been going for 3 years now. Vince tells me you're just about to produce your first aged rum, and you're distributing the whole thing. So tell me, on the wider level and on the Portsmouth Gosport Fair level, where would we get your rums and gins from?
Well, I mean, on a very local, the first place you should come and buy our stuff is right here at our shop in the distillery. Come here and buy it, because that's the most financially advantageous for us, obviously.
And you ring at the security. They let you say you've come to buy some gin or rum, and you come through.
Yes, we're here from sort of 10 to 4. Monday to Friday, and people can pop down and just buzz through, and the security will let you through. Interesting. I mean, it's at the moment, because the site isn't open to the public. One of the few ways you can get to come down and see the fort is by coming down and seeing us. So you get two for the price of one.
Great excuse. Okay. Well, look, we're going to have a look at your still room. We're actually going to play some music in your still room. Looking forward to that greatly. And we're going to have a look at the tasting room and your aging room as well. So thank you very much for talking to us, Giles.
Absolute pleasure.
And,
good to see you down here.
See you later.
So what is a casemate? Well, a casemate is a kind of a general purpose room, of which there are many here in Fort Cumberland, and they're pretty fortified, and they were used for storage, for gun emplacements, and also for sleeping men. Now they're quite small. We'll see one later when we go into the still room, because the Portsmouth Distillery still room is made in a casemate. It's quite a small room. It's arched, and when men were sleeping in there, which were kind of safe places to sleep, they'd be pretty crowded. There'd be as many as 30 men sleeping in one of these things. yeah, it must have been pretty crammed, pretty hot, and pretty sweaty. Now, over here, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 casemates, which were probably in the state that the distillery picked them up in when they first came here. They're in various states of decrepitude. This one here has got an unsafe floor, and yeah, they're looking pretty run down. The plan, as I understand it, is that eventually these will be done up, have businesses in them, and will become pretty exciting, I think. Let's have a look at the tasting room.
Yeah. Oh, powder magazine.
This is Vince Noyles, and along with Giles, he's the co-founder and director of Portsmouth Distillery. Vince is the distiller here, and he's my new best friend. So you now use this as the tasting room, and we've got a line of drinks here.
Yeah, we have our five spirits that we produce on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm. Now let's start with the rums, because you've been talking to me and you've been telling me you're really, at heart, you're a rum man.
That is true.
So let's start by talking about the rums. We've got a couple of rums at the end there.
Right, we'll start off with 1968. Now, 1968 is our unaged rum, what most people would call white rum. I don't.
Vince tells me that his rums are made with syrup, or sugarcane honey as it's sometimes called in North America. He doesn't make his rums from molasses, which he says can make them acrid, dry, and not particularly pleasant. Well, I have to tell you, rum was my first spirit when I was about 14 or 15. I think you will tell me you're the same. And I drank it with my mum, so this is for my mum.
Enjoy.
That's nice. Now you can drink 1968 just as it is, or on the rocks. In fact, it's just won the People's Choice Rum on the Rocks Award. Vince goes on to tell us about his other unaged rums, Forum and Cinnabar. He calls Forum his garden rum. I like the sound of that. And he describes it as a gin drinker's rum. Love a gin and tonic, me. Cinnabar is the distillery's spiced rum, and don't be fooled by the colour, it's still a lovely, fresh, unaged rum. Vince has spent a lot of time in St. Lucia over the years, and a lot of the families over there have their own spiced rums. So he borrowed the core spices from what they use, and then put his own twist on it.
But it's often described as Christmas in a glass, which is a nice way to term it.
Oh, definitely. I'm getting used to this rum tasting now. Got to remember that I'm supposed to be playing music with Rollo later.
Yes, I don't drink too much.
My granddad used to drink it with peppermint.
Oh, really?
Rum and pep.
Wow.
Yeah, rum and pep. He used to start the evening on rum and black, which was basically rum, and this was, mainstream rum, sort of.
That would have been dark Demerara.
It was dark. And he would start with that with Ribena on top of it. All mine had some strange ways. And then he'd finish the evening with peppermint cordial for some reason. Very strange.
Never even heard of peppermint cordial, let alone putting it in with rum.
Yeah. We're moving on to gins now, and Portsmouth Distillery has won awards for its Fort gin, which I'm going to try next.
There are 15 botanicals in it, 3 of which are in the fort. So we have elderflower in there, which grows on the top of the distillery, gorse flower, which is everywhere around the site in the gorse bushes, and sea radish, which grows quite prolifically along the Southsea and Portsmouth coast.
While Vince is getting the Fort gin ready to taste, we talk a little bit of gin history. Gin originally came to England with William of Orange. That's the one of William and Mary fame. who brought the Dutch Geneva over with him after the Glorious Revolution of 1688, and promptly put laws in place to encourage gin distillation. But the King's gin was too expensive for the common folk of England, which is why London gin was invented as a cheap alternative. Now, Geneva's more of a sipping gin, and while Vince says he didn't actually set out to emulate Geneva, a lovely sipping gin is definitely what he's created.
Okay, I'm going to sip it.
Okay.
Then I'm going to finish it.
So the palate journey you should be going on, I can describe for you if you wish. Not that I require you to taste everything, but lots of juniper because there should be juniper in it. Then there's an initial kiss of sweetness, which is sweet orange peel. It's then very soft, smooth, and round on the palate, which is orris root, angelica root, nutmeg, and ground almond. Then there's a hit of spice, which is cardamom, coriander, szechuan pepper, and pink pepper. Then starts to tail off into a teardrop finish capped top and bottom with fresh lime peel, within which there is a biscuit herbaceous tail of gorse flower, elderflower, and chamomile, nipped and held for a long dry finish with sea radish.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Well,
That's exactly
I took the words out of your mouth, didn't I?
I got all of that.
And finally, on to the distillery's London gin. And there's a story behind this one. The distillery was approached by the Mary Rose Trust, who gave them a list of 40 botanicals which were on board the Mary Rose when she sank in 1545. So Vince set about trying out a few combinations.
So the four key botanicals in Tudor gin that came off the list was hempseed, hazelnut, dandelion, and cherry. So what you have with Tudor is it's still quite soft and smooth, but it's very obviously a London dry because a lot of juniper comes up front. Mm-hmm. Then there's a sort of a little accent that comes from the dandelion before you get an explosion of cherry from the back of the palate to the front of the palate, and then it disappears.
Okay, so instead of orange, which I got very...
Yeah, I mean there's not a predominant flavour.
So there you have it. A good old London gin that Anne Boleyn herself would have loved if London gin had been a thing back then. You can mix it with a full-fat tonic or pretty much anything you want to throw at it. And the distillery makes a contribution to the Mary Rose Trust for every bottle sold.
Fantastic. I enjoyed all of those.
Thank you very much.
I've got to play some music now.
Yeah, cool.
But before we do that, can you show us where you actually make this?
Yeah, we're going to see Sophie, shall we?
Let's go and have a look at Sophie.
But before we go to the still room, mysteriously known as Sophie, let's take a look at the origins of the Cumberland Fort. It was built to protect the adjacent Langston Harbour from attack and invasion, for this area was an important source of salt production, commercial fishing and oyster farming since medieval times. Now a tranquil scene of tidal mudflats and nature conservation, its construction has a more sinister story to its origins.
Fort Cumberland was originally built at the beginning of the 1700s to protect this, the entrance to Langston Harbour. And then it was rebuilt in 1747 in the wake of the Jacobite Rebellion, Bonnie Prince Charlie and all that. And then it was rebuilt once again at the end of the century, and it took something like 29 years to get it to the state it is today. It was built using a mixture of contract and convict labour, and the convicts spent their nights in prison hulks moored out here in the harbour. Must have been a pretty grim existence.
So,
Sophie Wu.
right Vince, so Sophie Wu, where did the name come from?
Well, Sophie Wu is named after the lady that we dealt with in the company in China that we bought the equipment from. She would respond instantly, and then a couple of occasions I kind of went, must be 3 o'clock in the morning in China, and she was responding. And so really, due to her diligence, we decided to name the still Sophie Wu.
And they're planning to get another still soon, which no doubt will be called Sophie too. Vince is making rum today, and he takes us through the process from Sophie, who I have to say is a bit of a hot woman and gets up to 98 degrees, to the condenser at the other end with all the good stuff coming out.
Running through. That's then cooled by the water to its dew point, to its condensation point, and then it flows out as liquid.
Now, in addition to their own spirits, Portsmouth Distillery also makes bespoke gins, the most recent being Dean's Tipple for Portsmouth Cathedral. Wonder if they use it for communion. Oh, I must go and see. Vince is even doing grog for the Royal Navy, including the Queen Elizabeth.
Yeah, we're incredibly proud of that. You know, the Royal Navy's flagship, with both Giles and myself being ex-RN officers. We do Fort Gin, they call it Twin Island Gin, and we do our Cinnabar Spice Rum, and they call it Twin Island Spice Rum. They sailed off to do their recent, or they're currently still on it, global deployment with a lot of Portsmouth Distillery grog on board, which was very nice to know. We've also white labelled our Fort Gin for HMS Defender and HMS Dragon. So we are slowly and surely, and hopefully more to come, getting through the RN's fleet at the moment.
Excellent, so selling rum to the Navy, that's
Indeed.
like carrying coals to Newcastle.
Exactly.
After the still room, Vince whisks me across to the aging room, which is on the other side of the fort. The distillery is laying down 3 barrels a month here, and eventually each cask will produce about 400 bottles after the Angels share. They use bourbon barrels for aging and get them shipped over from the US by a cooperage in Scotland. Under US law, a barrel can only be used once for bourbon, so traditionally the rum industry has used bourbon barrels because there's plenty of supply.
Well, we've got approximately 56, 59 casks in here at the moment, 200 litre ex-Jim Beam bourbon casks, which have got our 1968 rum in, because the plan is to have a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old.
The first 3-year-old rum will come out in May 2022, and they'll release it cask by cask. So I can see a bottle from cask 1 is going to be a bit of a collector's item. Must keep an eye out for that. Meanwhile, Vince reckons his aging room will be full soon, and they're getting a second casemate next door ready to be aging room number 2. Right, back to the still room.
Thank you very much for talking to us. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, my pleasure too. Thanks for coming.
Good luck with your gins and your rums.
Thank you.
And your apple brandy. I tried that earlier
Yes,
on
yeah,
as well.
yeah.
And one further request. Do you mind if we set up and play here?
No, absolutely, I insist. Thank you.
That would be good. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Now we were going to do one, what's that one? I'll let you know. Babe, come back home, you belong. I said, babe, come back home, you belong. 'Cause if it's the same old words, it's gotta be the same old song. Now since the day I met you, always been the same. It's you that gets the glory, but it's me that gets the blame. Oh babe, come back home, you belong. 'Cause if it's the same old words, it's gotta be the same old song. Now you always wanted money, now it's so much more. You're asking for my soul, and I can't find it there no more. Oh, babe, come back home, you belong. 'Cause if it's the same old word, it's gotta be the same old song. off my bed. I had something for you, honey, that's once you held so near. Oh, babe, come back home, you belong. 'Cause if it's the same old words, it's gotta be the same. I said, if it's the same old words, it's gotta be the same. Yeah, it's the same old words, it's gotta be the same old song.